What do you think of LinkedIn as a marketing tool for business?
LinkedIn can be a very, very powerful tool. I think one of the common misconceptions is that you can create a profile for yourself or a company page for your company and just leave it. The true value of LinkedIn comes in some of these less used features, such as discussion groups. And that's where the real power, for example, of LinkedIn comes in for me. I'm starting a new website presence for myself called impactagent.org, and most of the organizations who I want to connect with and the people working in those organizations, I'm connecting with through LinkedIn. So it's a major part of my marketing, where I spend most of my marketing effort. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if we were to take that and put it into a print term, it would be a very powerful thing to, for example, rather than just having like, this is who I am and this is the print shop that I own and here's our print shop company page, to actually engage in some of the local communities. If I had a print shop and let's say, for example, I was working in small businesses, it might be an interesting thing to, for example, find the Los Angeles small business group on LinkedIn, actually go in there and participate, answer questions, because that way people get to know me, trust me, and then we can turn the conversation into a relationship later. And it's the same thing if, for example, you have a print shop in Delaware and you go into, for example, a Delaware graphic design group. Those are the kind of people that are going to be hiring. They're going to be hiring and using print companies. So those are some of the less known and less used features of LinkedIn that are very, very powerful. The other thing when it comes to LinkedIn is I've used LinkedIn ads very successfully. Mm-hmm. They are more expensive than, for example, Facebook or Google ads in generally speaking. Mm-hmm. However, they're very, very good because you can target specifically companies, industries, even specific positions within an industry. So mm-hmm. those would be the three things that mm-hmm. LinkedIn can be really helpful with.
Okay. If I could ask you about another social media asset that's often misunderstood and not used incredibly efficiently, Twitter.
Right.
What do you think about Twitter?
Twitter can be a very powerful tool. The one thing that's often misunderstood is that you don't actually have to be on Twitter to use Twitter. So, for example, if we were in a print organization and we had a blog, now somebody could come onto the blog and use the tweet button or social sharing button that we have on there and share it to their own Twitter presence without us actually being on Twitter. Mm-hmm. So that's sort of level number one.
Right.
Level number two would be so for example, socially enabling your content to be shared would be level one. Mm-hmm. Level two would be listening. So, for example, you can go to Twitter and you can do advanced searches for conversations that are happening in your area about your industry, or people even mentioning your own brand name. So you can do some rudimental brand reputation management in that case. And what brand reputation management basically comes down to when it comes to Twitter is finding out what are people saying about us. Mm-hmm. So if you were to go to Google and look up Twitter advanced search, you don't even have to have a Twitter account in order to use it.
Okay.
So that's really cool. Mm-hmm. The next step above that would be actually to start engaging. So this is where you've found that there's enough conversation, enough people you want to connect with. Could be, for example, leaders of other different organizations that you might want to work with or have a relationship with eventually. That's what Twitter is really good for, is relationship building. Mm-hmm. You might actually go on there and say that we're going to put some of our marketing effort into building relationships on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And then that becomes an effort, meaning that there's going to be a dedicated amount of time from somebody to actually going on Twitter and engaging in conversations. It could be anything from sharing links or to answering questions or to looking for questions to be answered. And then it kind of sort of becomes more of a evolution process of, we're making our content socially enabled so you can share it on Twitter without us being on there. We're listening to, we're engaging.
That's interesting. Some places on the net you can buy Twitter followers. Like you can, buy 25,000 followers. Sure. Does that have any value?
It's an interesting question because if you go to eBay and you mm-hmm. just look up Twitter followers, you can mm-hmm. buy probably 10,000 Twitter followers for $10. Mm-hmm. Is there any value in that? There really isn't, because those are empty dummy accounts or mm-hmm. bot accounts. So mm-hmm. there's no mm-hmm. real business value in it.
So it just makes your number look better.
It makes your number look better, which is kind of an interesting thing because then you have this aspect of social proof. Mm-hmm. It's not real social proof, so if anybody ever finds out, that would backfire really, really mm-hmm. poorly on mm-hmm. your reputation, organization, everything else. So there is a certain social proof that comes with a large number of followers, and the optics of that can be deceiving in the sense that if you see an organization that has 10,000 followers, it looks more impressive than somebody with 200. However, the second that somebody finds out that those are fake, it can really damage a brand. It can really damage a brand's reputation. So I think it's not a good strategy to use ever, and because it can reflect really poorly. Now, the second part to that would be that if you have an idea that you're, sharing your content with 10,000 people, but in reality it's only 10 or 5 or even 50, right? The effectiveness of social media in that case for an organization is going to just dive. So for example, because in reality you're only accessing like a small fraction of the fake number, a bunch of bots and fake accounts. So there is optics to it. However, I would stay away from that as far as possible.
That's interesting. In print, we've got something called JDF, which is Job Definition Format, which is a standard for transferring information about the specifications of a job between different pieces of equipment in the shop. I see Twitter as being a very similar thing in that you can use Twitter now to log into a lot of other social media assets. So it's like the bridge that goes between them. Is that an accurate assessment?
I haven't heard that before. However, I've heard people describe Twitter as a stream of consciousness, which was kind of an interesting analogy. I look at it the way I look at Twitter, and it's going to be different for different people. I look at it as a way to meet people and make relationships. So, for example, even this morning, I'm getting ready to start the final project for the course that we're starting next week for Royal University. And one of the things that I try to do for students is bring some interesting guest speakers. So I found out that there's this one person who writes for Copyblogger, which is a huge international website about copy, and it's a huge website. But they live in Calgary. So I didn't know that, and I just found out recently, and I sent him a tweet, and we are now in conversation, and we have each other's email, and we'll make that happen. So, for example, that's out of thin air, out of ether, there is a relationship now that happened only because of Twitter.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't previously thought of Twitter as a way to directly communicate with people, but it is that as well, right?
Absolutely. And that's the best way that I would use to describe it. What it is, it's a relationship building tool where you can meet new and interesting people, and then if there's a match or something else like that, you can take it into a business relationship or even just some sort of a personal relationship as well. I think it's a great tool for that.
How valuable is it for a business to be represented on Facebook?
It's an interesting question because actually 2 days from now I'll be teaching a Facebook course. How valuable is it? In my opinion, has shifted significantly over the last few years. What I would say is that it is valuable in case you are a local business. So, for example, if you're not an international brand, if you're not a multi-province or multi-state brand, it might be a really good opportunity to have some of that hyper-local content for just that specific group of people. On the other hand, if you are an international brand such as Red Bull or Coca-Cola or Target, there is a place for people to go to. Target is one of the examples that I use all the time for how Facebook marketing should be done right. They engage their followers, they have huge amounts of engagement on their posts and pictures and all the rest of that kind of stuff. The challenge comes in is that with all of these updates that Facebook has made, it's making it harder and harder for a brand to reach the people that have already said they like the brand. And some of the recent statistics say that there is about 10 to 16% of your entire like base that you've worked hard to earn that will actually see an update that you create. So I think that those are some of the challenges that Facebook and people using Facebook are going to see. Is there a value in it? I would say that there may be, depending on how you're actually going to use it. So, for example, it might be a really good place to administer some customer service. And if that's the way you use Facebook, and it's clearly defined within your marketing strategy, then it's fine.
Facebook is, as everyone knows, is absolutely massive. I mean, it's everywhere. Is it too crowded now? I mean, is it still possible for a small business to be noticed when you've got everybody and their dog with a Facebook account?
I think it can be. The reality is, 5 or 6 years ago, if you were one of the early adopters to Facebook, it was really easy to stick out. But now, if you look at just printers, and if we were to say, for example, printers in one particular city, almost everybody will have a Facebook page. So it's really hard to stand out. And this would draw back to the marketing strategy in my case. So I wouldn't necessarily push an organization to go into a place which is a small pond with a whole bunch of fish in it. I would rather focus on somewhere else. So for example, rather than expending a lot of time and effort and money on Facebook marketing, where you're competing with hundreds of other people sometimes, literally, it might be smarter to create a Facebook group for small businesses, or to move that effort into, for example, LinkedIn, where you can participate in a small group.
Exactly. That way you have the opportunity to demonstrate a little bit of thought leadership in your industry.
Right.